Hello out there, YouTubers, and welcome to PE Slick Podcast. I'm your host, Matt here. Each week I'm going to bring you something different in terms of leadership, ministering, entertainment, book authoring, and much more. But before we begin each time, I'm going to be airing a classic throwback commercial from back in the 80s or 90s or 2000s for my personal liking. Stay tuned.
This side of the medicine chest is mine. It has a lot of things for a cold that can relieve nasal and sinus congestion, sneezing, aches, pains, fever.
Well, my side does more because I've got Comtrex, multi-symptom cold reliever. Comtrex even relieves your cough, so all by itself it gives more kinds of relief than Dristan or Contac or Bayer. For your miserable combination of all these symptoms, this is better. Comtrex in tablets, liquid, and now capsules.
And we're back. This week is your host, Ranger Matt, and joining me this week is once again the talented Tina Sloan. I had the privilege of talking with her back in January. She was Lillian Raines on The Guiding Light from 1983 until the show ended in 2009. Her and Frank the Coppers were the few veterans on the show that stayed on for many years without leaving and she released 2 books. Her newest book, Chasing Cleopatra, came out in February, and I'm glad that she's here with me again. Welcome back, Tina.
Thank you very much, Matt. I'm glad to be back.
So talk a little bit about your new book, Chasing Cleopatra.
Well, it's. Do you have a copy of it? You can get it on Kindle too. Just by the way.
Okay. I didn't get a copy of it just yet.
It's just fun. I mean, I get letters from people constantly who say they sat down to read it thinking, well, you'd read a chapter or two, and they were up till 4 a.m. finishing it because it's very addictive. It takes 2 or 3 chapters, I think, to get into it, but it's a romantic triangle, which will surprise you. There are so many twists in it that's what I think people just couldn't believe. I got a call one night about 2 a.m. from someone, a friend of mine, and she said, all right, I'm awake, and I'm so mad. It's your book that's keeping me awake, so I'm calling to wake you up.
Man.
And when I see every review I see on Amazon and things from people I don't know, they all seem to say the same thing, that it's just an addictive, wonderfully interesting, and you learn something. It takes place in Hawaii in 5 days before Christmas. And there's an element of real danger in it because there's an Al-Qaeda terrorist on the island, and you have no idea who it is till very close to the end, and everyone's stunned when they find out. So that was sort of exciting to make sure people didn't know, but yet to leave hints all along. And the women in this book are very powerful. I mean, there's a man who's a CIA agent who's very powerful too, but the women, Cleopatra's 44. And she has this love affair that starts right at the beginning with a 24-year-old whose fiancé-to-be, he thinks, this woman who thinks she's going to be his fiancé is coming out. You find that in the next chapter. So that sets up quite a triangle, and then there become more triangles. And his whole family's out there, and their whole relationship gets very interesting. And this affair that Jake is having, Jake's the young 24-year-old, or maybe, no, he's 28 years old, who's having the affair. He's 15 years younger than she is, with Cleopatra, after they have a car accident. And it has a great deal of power, this relationship. You know, sometimes an affair is an affair. She had no idea that he had a fiancé coming out, let me add. So she was stunned when she finds that out. I don't want to give away much because there is this CIA agent who's Jake's father, but nobody knows he's a CIA agent in his family. I mean, they all think he's a lawyer, but he's a big, deep undercover agent. And I had great fun writing that because my son had been in Iraq doing intelligence in Al Anbar, And so he had a lot of black op, deep undercover friends. So I'd call them. And I even called a friend of mine who had been a former head of the CIA. So I got a lot of knowledge in that book that men have loved the book. You know, I sort of thought it would be women, but I have husbands of women who just pick it up and read it, and they don't put it down, they don't give it back to their wife who is reading it. Because it pulls them in with this, you know, these sort of secret things that people don't know. I mean, they do know if they go, I suppose, and study it, but I didn't know. And anytime I got in trouble, I'd call one of these covert agents and say, how do I get out of this problem? They'd tell me. So it was really fun to write. And I just loved writing these characters. There's a woman, Jake, the young man who's having the affair, she's about 52. And her relationship with Cleo and it's just interesting. And then there's a 77-year-old woman who's Cleo's mother, who's very pivotal in the book, but she's only in one chapter, really. But she's quite pivotal. But they're very interesting, different, but powerful, empowering women, which I didn't realize as I was writing it. But people keep saying this should be a Netflix. I mean, this has great parts for women and for men, but more for women, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I'm intrigued listening. It's like, you know, let me go on and get my copy. You know,
get it on Kindle, because I put the Kindle on at $4.99 purposely. I mean, they told me I should put it on at $11.99. I said no, I want a lot of people to read the Kindle because it lets people read it who may not be able to pay what the book is. You know, the book is, I think it's it's $20. So I didn't want people to get impoverished by buying my book. So I had an option there, and I thought it was a good one. And I think it's important to do that, too, because what I want is for people to read it and have fun. I mean, I was away on a vacation in the Dominican Republic recently, and all the women there had read it or were reading it while I was there. So the last day we all sat around the table and talked about it. And what fascinated me is how they had such different takes on what I've written. You know, I'd say, really? You thought that? And I can't say what they thought because it has to do with who the bad guy is and stuff. But, or they just had different takes. And I just thought that was intriguing, that they didn't see it the way I did. And I've loved hearing what people think. I've been doing these talking to book clubs, Skyping with them. Mm-hmm. And again, they have different ideas. And I got a wonderful review from the L.A. Times former head of the book editing, book review, which they don't have anymore. And I learned things from him that I didn't know I'd written. I mean, I didn't know why I'd written some things, but he, in his review, helped me find out what I'd done. It's just so interesting to get people's feedback, you know?
Right.
That's one of my favorite things, is for people to read it and say, oh, this is what I love most, or I disagree with you on this. And they tell me. One of them was so mad when I was saying, no, that's not what happened. She said, no, you're wrong. So I went to myself. I thought, but I wrote the book.
Right.
So it was great fun. I mean, I just love writing it, and people seem to love to read it. As I said, they just don't put it down. One friend of mine who's 40 and has a 4-year-old, 5-year-old child said, I didn't want to read a book to him tonight because I wanted to get back to the book, so I didn't. And I thought, oh, that's really nice of me.
Now, other than me, have you been interviewed anything about your books?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
I've done interviews, and I've written articles, and I'm going on Monday to talk to 100 women about the book, and hopefully they'll all buy it. And I did one here for a couple of 100 people. And yes, I have. Not that much because it came out the 1st of February.
Right.
And I went away, and then I've been busy sort of with a lot of things, family and things.
Yeah.
So I haven't done as much, but I do interviews. I mean, I love talking about it because I loved this book. It's just fun.
I'm intrigued. You know, I mean, I know I don't have a copy yet, but I'm intrigued to find out. So, you know, what happens next? You know, you've added your own guiding light spin. You know, but it's your book. You know.
Well, a lot of a lot of the soap magazines have reviewed it, or the soap opera news and all those things have reviewed it. Reviewed it. and they all say it's just heaven. It's getting a little bit of soap opera back in your life again.
Absolutely.
But with a more, with a spin. And with surprises, which is true of soap opera. And everyone said, too, the chapters are short, and you just want to keep going. And it changes the voices of each. There are 4 people's voices in the book. And where Cleo talks, and the young girl Julia talks, and Jake doesn't talk. I don't let him talk. But the 4, Miranda, the mother, talks, and Tripp, the CIA agent, talks. And people say, I just get so excited with this thing, and then the next person comes in, and I want to hear what they say. So you're pulled along pretty fast in it, which is like soap opera. You're watching Tim, Reva, and Josh, and then the next minute you're watching Buzz and Lillian, and then the next minute it goes to Liz Kiefer, and so it keeps going ahead.
Right.
Russell Chappelle, and it keeps going ahead, but you sort of want to still stay with Reva and Josh, but then you get pulled up in the next thing. So, and it has cliffhangers sort of on a lot of the chapters. People at least have said this to me. And that's soap opera too. So of course it had something to do with soap opera, though I didn't know it as I wrote it.
So where's volume 3, part 3?
Well, part 2 is,
yeah.
People keep saying, where's the sequel? I mean, that's almost every single person who's read it says, I don't want to leave these characters. Where's the sequel? And I thought, oh, good grief. If I have to start writing it, I have to make sure this gets off to a good start.
Right.
And to do that, you have to go around and you have to talk to people, and you have to, like I'm going down to Del Rey on Monday, and I'll do that, and then I'll go somewhere else. And, you do that. I mean, I was supposed to go to D.C., but I canceled it. She's going to be down in Florida, the woman I was going to be interviewed by. And I thought I didn't want to go to D.C. because of this virus. It's someone my age, you just don't want to travel right now. If I was 40 or 50 or 60 even, I wouldn't think twice about it, but I'm a little older. So I have to think about these things.
No, you're still 40. You're still that lady that was on Another World. Like I posted in my podcast. I don't know if you've seen that. I posted your first scenes on Another World.
Yeah. That was fun.
Yeah, thank you.
I loved it.
I had fun putting it together, and when I
you could see that, Matt. I could see you had fun doing it. I could tell that.
Yeah.
It worked, and it doesn't work if you're not having fun doing it, right?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, the only thing I didn't have fun with when doing it is because my laptop is kind of old, so sometimes it freezes, and I got to cut it off and start all over again. But no, I had fun editing it. I had fun talking with you the first time and right now, and it's like when with someone like me doing this, it's like, if you're just doing it, it's like, no, like you gotta have fun with it. That's why when I interview you guys, no matter who, I tell them, like, when I ask you a question, take your time with it for answering me. Let's have fun with this, and I've had fun talking with you and Liz and Ron and everybody else. I had fun with it. And I'm always happy when I release it. My mother loved it.
Oh, that's important.
Yeah. Let me see. So one quote that you had on your website, I didn't ask you about it before. You had said, the real sin is not dying, but living an unused life. Where did that come from?
It came from a book on running. When I was marathoning, I read this book on running. And I'm blanking on the man whose name it is, but I can look it up. I read that 20 years ago, I think. The real sin is not dying, but living an unused life, which I think is true. He was a great runner himself, and he was a doctor. He had 10 children. And I know he died recently. But he was full of things like that. He would make running be like life. And he would run in the morning for miles, and then he'd come in and work with his patients, and I guess go home and see his children and run again. And I remember the thing that struck me when I was reading about him, or reading his book, was that he would come in and never bother showering because he said, it was healthy sweat. I'll just towel it off and get into my doctor clothes and start working. He just was a very free man, I guess. He didn't, do what other people did, but he would make it seem, too, that runners were isolators. They didn't have lots of friends. They didn't like to spend money. I mean, there were interesting things he equated with being a runner, and which I didn't really agree with too much, but
right.
because I would have taken a shower. And I love to spend money. I mean, I'm not that kind of person, but I think the really great runners are, and he was one of the great runners. And I think he was 60 when he wrote this book, and he was running his age. He was running and winning his age, and he just was. I love the fact that he was a doctor too.
Right.
I'm trying to think where I could find his name. I forget what the book was called. It was so long ago. On Running and Being. That's what it's called.
Okay.
On Running and Being.
Okay. Over the years, I mean, between acting and now being a book author, what's that feeling? Well, let's back up a little bit. What was that feeling like when you was playing Billy in all those years, and you would see fans on the streets or at the event who, loved the show and loved Billy and everything? What's that feeling like seeing fans in real life?
Oh, I think it was wonderful. It was lovely. I mean, some fans I still am in touch with.
Right.
Because you're in their house. I mean, 5 days a week, 52 weeks a year. I was on for 26 years. I wasn't on all that much. I mean, I wasn't on 5 days a week, but I was certainly in their living rooms or their bedrooms all those years.
Right.
And they were like friends. They'd seen you cry. They'd seen you sad. They'd know when you were sick. I remember people would say, I know they could hear it in your voice that you didn't feel well. The girl who did my voice in Italian, our show was all over the world. It was in Germany, it was in Italy, it was in Spain, it was in France, and we had people who dubbed our voices, called a dubbitrice in Italian. And of course, she relied on me because that was her livelihood, putting my voice in to the show. And when the show went off the air, she was without a job as well as all of us. But she would know. She had to look at my face while she was putting her voice in, and she would say, "Oh, I'm so worried about you. You look like you have a terrible cold, or you look like you have a fever," because she would be studying it so much. She knew me better than I knew me. I never wasn't looking at myself that much. And I think fans were like that. They really cared about you.
Oh, absolutely.
They could, they could get mad at you. That whole Maureen story.
Oh, yeah.
Which was terrible. But, I didn't do it. They wrote it. I just did my lines. And sometimes I wanted to say to people who were mad at me about it, but I didn't write it. I didn't think it up. I wouldn't have killed her. She was my friend. I hated killing her. Or hated being the reason that she drove off the road.
Yeah.
But people forget that you're not the character. People would run into you with their, when I was on Somerset, the first show I was on, I was definitely a bad woman. And people would hit me with their shopping carts in the A&P, and they forgot that. Well, they'd take it seriously.
Right.
Some fans took it seriously, and I feel this way about when I'm watching a show. If someone's so bad, I really hate them. Well, people hated Jim Redhorn, who played Bradley, and he was one of the kindest, nicest men in the world. And he didn't want us to do these lines, but it was his job.
Right, and that's one thing that I notice a lot, especially if I'm watching the making of a show or even if it's soap. That is one thing that an actor will say, especially one that's playing a villain. They play a villain so well or for years, and somebody outside of a fan, they'll get attacked by that, and it's like, well, lady or sir, I'm just playing a role. That's not me.
Yeah, that's the last thing that I've done.
Yeah,
I hate what I'm doing too. But I get paid for it. That's what I remember Jim saying. He just hated it, but he had no choice, really. Well, he didn't have a choice. He was under contract.
Right. I remember asking Liz Kiefer this question. I was going to ask you this. If God and Like was still on the air today, 2020, where do you see Lillian Raines at right now? Would she still be with Buzz Cooper?
Well, that would be 10 years, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
Probably she would be, because that's the person she is. So I would think that her character is such that she would stay with someone, and they had fun together. They weren't, it wasn't one of these things that was a mad, passionate affair that would go away. I mean, they enjoyed each other, and they cared about their children, and I think that would, and their grandchildren, and I think that would have kept them together. I think she would have been wonderful to his children and grandchildren, and he would have been the same toward Beth and her family. So I think there would have been a bond that was beyond just dating or falling in love. They would have had a real family kind of bond.
Right.
And I think they were of an age where they weren't going to just run off with somebody else. Probably. I don't think they would have at this age. I think this was when they appreciated someone who would give them stability. And I think they would have become stable. I mean, he would have still been a little crazy man, which is the joy of him and the joy of working with him. And they had so much fun, and I think that would have kept them together too.
Right. Yeah, I thought that was a good comparison. I mean, Lillian needed a love interest, and Buzz, he'd been with Nadine, Jenna, who were both killed off, and he was with even Holly and Olivia. And then when it came to Buzz and Lillian, I was like, that's an interesting comparison. I mean, that Buzz and Lillian.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, that's an interesting comparison. And then they kept y'all. I mean, they paired y'all when Buzz was doing the mayor storyline with Doris Wolf,
right?
And then y'all were together until the very end, and then y'all got married when the show ended. That was
right.
a good comparison. Yeah.
Well, I think he yearned for someone who was going to be there for him, and he'd lost his son. He wanted someone there for him.
Right. What are your future plans for the rest of the year? Well, 2020 right now.
Pretty much the book, I think. I'll be going, if one can travel, fly all over the place, I'm supposed to go to Houston for a book signing, and parties and book things around so that the book gets seen in different areas, which is what it needs.
Right.
Florida, people are buying it. And there's a map where you can watch where your book is being bought. And mine's being bought a lot in New York, San Francisco, Florida, Pittsburgh. I mean, it's interesting places. And you don't know, well, Pittsburgh makes sense because it was a guiding light city. But it's interesting to watch, but there are places where I'd like it to be. Denver had 3. I'd like Denver to have a big, huge following. But you have to probably go to Denver and do a talk and meet people. And my book, I really believe, is the kind of book that word of mouth is going to sell it. People are going to read it and say, oh, this is so good. I had so much fun with this book. So somebody else will read it. And then they'll say the same thing. And that's how I've watched it happen in Florida. People just, I walked to a table the other day. There were a group of women, and one I knew, and I said hi to her, and she said, oh, I just finished your book. And then she said to the other people, she just wrote a book called Chasing, and they both said, oh, my God, I just read that. They didn't even know who I was or that she knew me or anything. They just said, oh, I just finished your book. And so I thought, that's how it's going to work. People are just going to hear it and hear about it, and it'll go from there. But you have to go to places. Like, it's the book of the month in Charleston, so I have to go to Charleston, I think, which is a 6-hour drive, because I don't want to fly at this point.
Right.
I mean, maybe this virus will be taken care of, and they will find something for it right away, and then we'll all be fine. We can travel. Let's hope.
Yeah, let's hope on that one. I mean, I believe that, hopefully this virus will go away, be taken care of. I mean, it's just, a lot. Between that and the tornadoes got hit in Tennessee.
Those tornadoes.
It's a lot going on in the world today. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Everywhere.
Yeah.
I mean, people are killing each other in that Turkey-Syrian thing.
Yeah.
It's awful.
Yeah.
It's just awful.
Looking back at your work, I mean, from the time you was on Somerset, Search for Tomorrow, Another World, Guiding Light, the 2 books that you, Changing Shoes and Kissing Cleopatra, looking at your work over the years, how would you sum that up? I mean, did you envision your life being the way it became, acting and book writing?
Well, they're both things I loved as a child, and I'm convinced that the things you love as a child are what you should do with your life. And a lot of people don't. But when they get older, they do. They go to those things. I mean, I read morning, noon, and night as a child, and now I'm writing because I read all that time.
Right.
And I always wanted to act, and I'm still acting. I'm in Crystal Chappelle's Venice the series, and I'm doing Beacon Hill the series, and every now and then I get a movie role, and I've been doing some plays. So I'm still working, acting, but I'm sort of enjoying this writing. The process of writing is like acting because you get into each of the characters and you become them just the way you do Lillian Raines or Olivia Delaney or any of the other, or Kate Cannell, the other women I've been.
Right.
And this is the same thing. I get into them. And I think that's why the book is working, because people get involved. They care about these people.
Absolutely. When to watch you guys, character-wise, couple-wise, every day, Monday through Friday, you get hooked. I know I got hooked, and I was watching the show since 2000 when I was way back when I was in third grade, and kids watching this when everybody else is watching teen shows or certain cartoons. It's like I got hooked, and it led to me being a writer. I don't know how it happened, but watching you guys, it was amazing. During the time I was watching, you and Beth, y'all were involved in the St. Christopher storyline when Beth was with Edmund.
Oh, I love that storyline. That was so much fun.
Yeah, that
was so
was
much fun going that island and Beth being a princess. Oh, I think it was, and then of course I'm trying to murder her.
Yeah, that was pretty deep there. Yeah, they because at first I was like, well, is Beth leaving the show? And then, oh, I'm Lorelai. Lorelai, did she have a twin?
That was that was ridiculous. I remember Grant and I would look at each other and we'd go, she looks exactly the same and we're not supposed to know who she is?
Right.
I mean, she looked exactly the same. And I would look at her and I'd go up to the writers and I'd say, okay, you just tell me how, as her mother, I do not know this is Beth. And they'd say, you just don't. And I go, okay, I don't. And you just had to play with it, but she'd be in the room and Philip and I would be, Grant and I would be almost laughing. It was so ridiculous that we didn't know her.
Yeah.
And one time I said, doesn't she remind you of someone, Philip? And I just threw that line in, and I thought he was going to kill me because he started to laugh. And but he carried it off. He said, yeah, sure, she does.
Oh, absolutely.
It's always fun to do that.
Yeah. You guys were on there for years, and many people have been on that show. Y'all even had people like Nita Long and Jim, who went on and did other things, and then there's people who y'all had who you don't see on TV no more. I know y'all memorizing dialogue, and then y'all got like maybe 1 or 2 takes doing these shows and doing it for years. Did that ever happen where y'all in the middle of a scene, y'all just fall out laughing?
Oh, yes. Oh, yeah. You get the giggles, and you just couldn't stop it.
Right.
And you'd laugh, and you'd laugh, and you'd laugh, and you'd laugh, and you'd feel so good. And at first it was funny, and everyone thought it was funny, and then they'd want to get on with the scene because they wanted to go home or they wanted to have lunch or whatever it was. I mean, I'm not saying this was me, but I certainly got them many times, and people would just glare at you. Mikey and Grant and Justin, meaning Buzz, and Michael,
Rick Bauer and Philip Spaulding.
Rick and Grant, and Philip, were so funny. Oh, and Billy was just hilarious. They were hilarious. So if you got them together at a party scene and they'd get going, everybody would be on the floor. I mean, they just have us laughing hilariously. They were so clever.
Yeah. And I could tell that myself from watching the old episodes where, like, if Jordan was somebody that laughed, and of course everybody says, Michael, Larry, and Grant, who were friends on the show were friends in real life, so they was always kind of the ones that would get somebody laughing or going on. And I'm sure, because when you're rehearsing, you're supposed to get all that out, but when you're taping, if it's funny, you can't help it. It happens.
Well, we rehearsed it in the morning, and they would be just so funny.
Yeah.
And then something would be said by mistake later on upstairs, or somebody would walk into a closet, or instead of the door, and it took everything in you not to bite your lip and not to say, not to give it away so that they could continue taping.
Right. Other than what happened with Maureen, Lillian was a good character figure on the show, and she was a breast cancer survivor, and she to me, Lillian was on my list of people that were good. Was there any comparisons or similarity between Lillian Raines and you, Tina Sloan?
No, I mean, sure, there are always going to be some. I mean, I love my child the way she loves her child, and I was a loyal friend the way she was a loyal friend, except Maureen. But I think my life was much more adventurous and much more glamorous than hers is.
Right.
Hers was. I mean, she was a nurse. She took care of people. She came home. She probably watched TV. I remember they had me watching Gone with the Wind one day with a kitten or something to make a point about how Lillian lived her life. And you know, I lived in New York City. I was going out at night when I came home, wearing in those days, early in the 80s and 90s, wearing glamorous clothes of my own. You know, I was living a pretty glamorous life.
Right.
And I loved that. And I was traveling, and she didn't like to fly. She was really, when she went out with Mike Bauer, Beverly McKenzie was also in love with Mike Bauer. And
what?
Yeah.
Oh no, I'm sorry. A lot of the early '80s storylines I don't know too well. I'm still watching it. But yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and in love is the wrong word, but they were sort of competing for him. And he'd say, "Let's go up on my plane," and Beverly would go fly with him, but I wouldn't because I didn't want to. I hated flying.
Right.
And, you know, we were such different women. But I think he preferred Lillian, interestingly. And Beverly went to men by the gallon, you know. But it was sort of interesting to see they really made Lillian be the person that I think she was, a really good, solid person who didn't want to break out at all. And Tina, I think I'm a good, solid person, but I do like to break out and do adventurous things. You know, I live for that. Or I would never have written books if I wasn't adventurous. I would never have been an actress if I wasn't adventurous. I would never have, you know, done some of the things I did, run the marathons, climbed 20,000-foot peaks. Lillian would never have done any of those things. We couldn't have been more unlike, I guess, except that we both loved our children.
Right. What was it like working with Paul Rouse, Joe Phelps, Alan Wilder, the last producer?
I like them all, but one thing about me is I usually like everybody. And Paul lived in my building. He married someone who lived in the building I lived in New York City for 45 years. And so I knew him socially pretty well.
Okay.
You know, I'd see him. They had two huge grand pianos in their apartment, in their living room. And his wife was a very famous concert pianist. Israela Margalit is her name. And she was just wonderful. And Paul could be difficult. He was the producer on Another World as well as Guiding Light.
Right.
And there was no question people sort of had fallings out with him, but I think because he knew me personally, I never fought with him. I sort of stood by him. I remember we had a sort of a revolt at one point on Guiding Light, and I stood by Paul. People wanted to change. I don't even remember what they wanted to change. But I thought what he was doing was right. I thought he was a very good producer. I loved Jill Farron Phelps because she gave me my breast cancer storyline, which I thought was just probably the high point of what I got to do on that show.
Yeah.
Do that for a year. It was just so helpful. I remember I got awards from Sloan Kettering, from the Italian American Breast Cancer Society. They flew me to Milan, and I mean, I just had it was a wonderful. They were seeing benefits from doing that storyline. People would call me. They were about to have an operation at the studio, and they wanted to talk to me before they had their double mastectomy. And, you know, I felt that I was really helping people. And I get letters from young girls saying, I know I have a lump, and the doctor says I'm too young. And I say, go to another doctor. You know,
right.
Let them stop you. You know your own body. You're never too young. I mean, it doesn't, you know, she was 16 or something. That's not too young, I guess. And we got letters from people that really, one woman wrote me and she said, by being able to cry for you, I was finally able to cry for myself. When I went through breast cancer, this is this woman, I had to take care of my husband and children and not let them see that I was upset. So I could never cry for myself, but by crying for you, I could. And if you allowed people this way to free themselves was just wonderful.
Yeah.
You know, and we'd go on after the show, and Lillian would go on and say, make sure you get a mammogram. And I don't know if it was Sloan Kettering or the American Cancer Society, but they said they never had more mammograms in their history than they had during that show.
Right. I thought that was written and done very well on Guideline's part and on your part, the way you portrayed that. And that was a good storyline. And I always thought like, Lillian would be I'm not sure. I mean, other than Reva, who had a breast cancer storyline too in 2006, years later, I always figured, well, Lillian would be a good, example or model for another character on the show if they went through the same thing as well.
Yeah. Yeah, I think she really could have helped anybody.
Yeah.
I don't think she helped Reva, did she?
Not so much. No, y'all didn't have a lot of scenes together during that. No. But you were around. To kind of talk about you working with some of your cast members, I was going to say, now earlier we talked a bit about Marge Busey, who recently passed since the last time we talked. Now Marge, I knew from All My Children. She was on there. And when they brought Alexandra back, Joan Collins was Alexandra, and then they brought Marge back on. I thought that was really cool. I'm sure when Beverly left, that was a hard role to replace, and then when they found Marge and brought her on, that was a good recast on their part, and she did the part well.
She did. Nobody could be. I mean, Beverly McKenzie just was genius, and she had that role for so long that it was hard for anyone to take that on. And I mean, as I said about Marge, she was just a lovely, lovely woman, and she was just wonderful to work with. But no one could be Alexandra. If you say Alexandra to me, I see Beverly, of course.
Right.
But she had it for such a long time when I was there that, and it's a hard recast when someone very powerful has had a role like that. Marge did a great job. I'm not saying at all that she didn't do a great job. She did.
Right.
But it's very hard to do that, I think.
Yeah.
Oh, I think everybody. She was just delightful.
Yeah.
Marge was more, she wasn't as outgoing. I think that's a fair thing. She was very elegant and just lovely, but she sort of kept more to herself, I think is what I'm trying to say. Or at least from my point of view, she did. I mean, Beverly and I had such silly scenes that we got to be very good friends because they were so ridiculous. When she'd come over and I'd be ironing and she'd be taking off in a jet. This was early on in the show.
Right.
So we became great friends, and I loved her son Scott. And Marge I didn't know personally. I guess that's it. I just enjoyed working with her because she was lovely. Just a lovely woman, but I never really knew her. People don't, like when Beth Chamberlain took over for Judy Evans, that was hard. And that had only been, Judy'd been on only 3 or 4 years, I think. Maybe, I don't know, that's about all, when Beth took over.
Right.
Yeah.
And what was it like working with both Judy and Beth Chamberlain?
Well, they're both heaven. I mean, Judy Evans now I work with on Venice occasionally. She's out in California. So I get to see her, which I adore seeing her. She was a really young girl when she was doing that. She was in every way, and she did a great job. She was just very sweet. But Beth Chamberlain, of course, we worked together forever, and I just adore her. She's like a daughter to me. And I'm the godmother of her son.
Oh.
So we're very close. I mean, that's how close we are.
Yeah.
We don't see each other that much because I'm in Florida. She's in Nyack, New York. But we don't need to. If I called her right now, we'd talk for 5 hours and just be like we were in each other's dressing rooms all those years ago. I loved her. I just love her because when you work, thank heaven I loved her. If you work with someone every day, you better love them. But she's a really fine person.
Yeah.
And Peter, her husband Peter, was her boyfriend, and he came to our house one day, and she told me she really loved him. I said, Peter, if you don't ask her to marry him, you don't ask her to marry you right now, you're going to lose her. He asked her to marry her, and they've been married ever since. Because there were other men that were interested in her, but he was the perfect person for her. He just was a great husband for her.
Right. Yeah, she really brought her role as Beth, and because Beth was kind of quiet, kind of softer. But when they brought her back in '97, and she stayed all until the end, she brought a lot of wildness. And at one point, she was bad. She had kidnapped Gus and Alan, and had hit Alan with the
no.
stick. And
she said to me, I have no idea. There was no motivation for that at all.
Yeah. Did you interact or work with the first Alan Spaulding, Christopher Bernard?
Yes, I did. Matter of fact, he came to my apartment. I don't know why, but a bunch of people came to my apartment, and he came and he said, now this is what the Spaulding home should look like, which I loved. I mean, he was very, I don't want to say snobby, but that's probably the right word, but a nice snobby, in a funny way.
Right.
And, when he said that, and then he looked at me very differently after that. When he saw where I lived, he sort of changed his feelings toward me.
Right.
I mean, I was just another young actress at that point in his mind, but then he sort of liked how I lived. It was very funny. I didn't know him well. I mean, Grant Alexander knew him very well. They were very well. He was his father.
Right.
When you get very close to the person that's your parent, your mother or father, and you would protect them no matter what. And I felt that way about Grant Alexander, too. I would protect him no matter what, because he was my son-in-law for on and off, or best boyfriend for so long in the show that he was like a son to me.
Yeah. Yeah, and Grant, well, I know at one point, I know he left the show twice, and John Bolger even played Philip in 85 till 86, and then they brought...
He was terrific.
Yeah, and they brought Grant back. And I always felt like Philip was a good pillar of the show because he held the role so strong. He stood up to Alan, and he was supportive to Alan Michael, even though the two of them fought. I'm not gonna lie, I was a little left field about it when they made Philip crazy, and then they did the Who Killed Philip storyline because that was a different side of Philip. But I'm glad they brought him back in the end. He was really good as Philip.
Well, as you know, it's the writers that choose the and you look at the script and you go, this can't be me. This isn't, I would never. It was interesting when a different writer would come on the show. Sometimes, I remember that Lillian all of a sudden started talking like, I don't know, like a New Yorker, she was from Brooklyn or something. And I thought, wait a minute, this woman has never watched the show. You could tell. And everybody said that day. They said, this woman has never seen the show. You can't write her characters like this. It's totally wrong. And everyone complained, and she fixed it, or whoever wrote it fixed it. But it was interesting to see a writer who didn't know the character, really know them. It came through. Usually the character could fix it by making it their own, but sometimes it was so far off. They should have Lillian out playing baseball, which would never have happened. Although I would have happily done it, but it wouldn't have happened. It wasn't that as a right example. It was something that I would never have done. And so that wasn't, those were things that we all would laugh about, sort of, but we didn't like it when it was happening.
One person you was paired with in the 80s, I was going to say what was it like working with him because he remained with the show currently on and off. Joe Rogers, who was Hawk Shane.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We didn't work together that long. I mean, I got engaged to him for a little while, I think.
Yeah.
But I didn't really. It didn't have the length of time that Philip or Beth did, or Rick. Who you were with for years and years and years. But he's a lovely man. It was very nice to work with him, but it wasn't that long.
Right.
So I don't know.
Well, he was somebody I saw Lillian had been with because I knew Hawk was with Sarah and even paired him with Alexandria at one point. I was like, well, Hawk got with Lillian. That's pretty cool.
I don't think it was the right match though.
Right.
For Lillian.
Right. Anything to add about working with any of the girls that was Lizzie, Hayden Panettiere, Marcy Rowland, Crystal Hunt?
Mm-hmm. They were all fun. I mean, they really were fun. Hayden was, just so good. She was so good in that murder story. Have you seen the murder story?
Yes, when she
revealed that she killed Carl. And we didn't know either.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. She went on and grew. She was and then they did the Busy leukemia storyline. She was so good. Yeah. She was so good. Yeah.
It was just fun to work with her. I mean, she was just right there and knew everything, and she was terrific. Crystal Hunt was fun too. They were very different.
Right.
and Marcy. I didn't have that much to do. Hayden is the one I work with the most.
Right.
Because we were all involved in the same stories. And they were such dramatic stories that we were with them a lot. But, you know, the other daughters they were all just so cute and blonde and perfect.
Roger Thorpe, Michael Zaslow.
Oh, Roger. Oh, Michael Zaslow.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I mean, he was just so funny. He'd sit in the hair or makeup room and just keep us all smiling and laughing. And he was different, you know. He wasn't a typical soap actor.
Right.
I don't know why I'm saying that, but he really wasn't. And again, I mean, he was working with Holly and Beverly and different people.
Right.
So I didn't really work with him, but I liked him immensely. I mean, I always was happy when he was in the makeup room because he just would keep me laughing and keep me smiling, and he just had good insights. If there was a big party scene, he'd always go to his dressing room and hide out. And I sort of learned that from him. Not everyone was supposed to stay on the set. But he'd pay no attention. He'd walk back to his dressing room and just stay there until the scene was over. Because nobody'd see you. You know, if it's a scene with two people and you're just background, he just wouldn't do it. So I started not doing it. So he taught me a really good lesson early on.
Yeah. Roger was something else. He was one heck of a villain on the show. Yeah.
Just brilliant. Oh, what a good villain.
Yeah.
I had an uncle who was, well, I guess he wasn't that old. I think he seems to me like he was that old, but I guess he wasn't. And he just loved Roger. He'd call me. He lives in Boston. He and his wife, who was my aunt, and he'd call me and say, "That Roger, Tina, that Roger." And he'd go on and on. And when he was really sick at the end of his life, I knew he was going to die when he stopped watching Batting Light and he stopped watching Roger. Because until maybe 2 weeks before he died, I'd go to visit him. You know, I'd go to Boston to visit him in the nursing home or the hospital at that point.
Yeah.
He'd say, "Well, that Roger Thorpe, you know what he did?" And then when he didn't care, you knew it was over. Because Roger was what he cared about.
Yeah.
And Roger really touched people, and they hated him, but they loved him because they hated him. You know, he'd say, "Can you believe what he did today?" I loved it. I envied him. Roger.
Yeah, I mean, because recently, it's a guy who was a publicist for your show named Mike. He's been posting the episodes of each year, and they recently did the one where you was there too when Nick and Minnie were getting engaged, and Billy ended up being the one who shot Roger because Roger had called out Mindy or something like that, and you wanted to slap Roger or punch him out, but, you know, you just loved to hate him. He was next to Alan Spaulding. Roger was one heck of a guy. And
well, I think he was a better evil person than Alan Spaulding.
Yeah. Oh, I believe so. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, he was really evil.
Yeah.
And so was Alan. But Alan, I don't know, Alan, yeah, I guess he was evil, but he wasn't as, Roger was just so evil and so bad.
Yeah.
Well, Ron certainly is Alan, because he was such a nice person. It was hard to believe that he could be mean. He'd be mean, and I'd sort of be laughing at him because he isn't mean. You know, I mean, he's such a nice person.
Yeah. So I know earlier I was asking about the St. Christopher storyline. What was it like working with the guy that played Edmund, David Andrew McDonald?
Oh, heaven. I just did a movie called, well, I was in the movie Post with Meryl Streep with David McDonald. I don't know if she's married. They have a child, but they were engaged, so I guess it was his fiance. And it was so nice to know what he's up to and that he's still around. I mean, this was about 3 years ago.
Right.
But, you know, I was sitting next to her and she said, "Now, you were on Guiding Light. Did you know David?" I said, "Everybody knew David." You know, he was just, he was so fun. There was one scene when he had us in San Cristobal and he had us all got us all these fabulous dresses to wear, and you know, when he was playing the prince, and he just would make you smile. He'd dance with you. He was just so flirtatious all the time, and that was nice. That was just so much fun.
Yeah, the action that he brought for playing Edmund and him tussling with Richard, Bradley Cole, even when Bradley came back as Jeffrey O'Neill, you know, those two worked together a lot. Yeah.
Right.
In a lot of ways, Edmund reminded me of, y'all had a villain early on named Gary Swanson and Neil Leperus. In real life, his name was William Bell Sullivan, and then he played Gary from 89 till 90 when they sent Gary to jail for the Towers bombing. And Neil Everest, he was with Beth. His name was John O'Connor, I believe. Yeah.
Good for you. I mustn't have been on much during that phase. We're not with those people, that's for sure. You know, if you go in the morning, or you work certain days, and you cannot see some people who are working totally different scenes because they're working different days or they're working the afternoon, and you just don't see them for months.
Right.
Unless there's a big party or something. And you come in the morning, you do your scenes, you go home. They come in and do the afternoon scenes or different days.
So that's normally what a typical day was like, right? I would do episodes for 2 episodes or 3 and then go home afterwards, kind of?
You do one episode. You do one episode a day.
Okay.
And you go in at 6:30, I think, and have breakfast and rehearse and laugh. And at 9, you started filming. And sometimes you were there, I mean, often you were there all day. I'm saying you go in the morning. Lunch you were finished lunch about 2. But you could work till 4, you could work till 10 at night. It depended on the day. And, if you could have one scene in the morning and one at the end of the day, and there you were all day. Because or one at 9 in the morning and 1 and 2 in the afternoon. So you just would sit in your dressing room and read or study or maybe go home, but it was pretty hard to go home.
Yeah.
Especially if you lived out of the city. I lived in the city, so it wasn't as hard for me to do. But you sort of didn't want to get out of your costume and your hair and makeup and walk around the streets. You just sort of stayed there.
Yeah. I wish I was one of the, I mean, I know that y'all didn't really have like a live audience. It was like really just you guys and your producer, director who was directing y'all that day. But I wish I was one of those fans that could have came on and seen y'all do like a live show of that episode or for that day or something. Because that you
would have loved it.
Yeah. Yeah. Guy in Light was
some
really.
people did come.
Yeah. Yeah, y'all had people come when y'all was filming the last episode. I saw that on YouTube. Some fans that came and saw that shoot.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
A lot of fans. It is. You really do love the show. I can tell you do. You know more than I do.
And the show is kind of crazy because I'm almost 30, so it's like how would I know all this? But yeah, I like I said, I got hooked on the show. And when I get hooked on the show or an actor or actress, I like to find out more because it's like, what was the show like back then, and was it different? I mean, I know of course you guys were younger then, but the Guy in Light, of course, was different in the 80s, and then it ended. Then when it ended, but it was good over the years, and no matter who was on there, what producers, and it was good even toward the end. It was really good, and I was really surprised when it was like, boom, on April Fool's Day, y'all canceled. What? You're not joking.
I remember I was coming out of the theater, and I saw a headline, or something on the New York Times that Guy in Light come up here, and at the same moment, Ellen Wheeler had called me. She'd been calling me all during the show, but I'd had my phone off, and told me.
Yeah.
And she was trying to save the show. That's why she made it look. People said, well, it looked awful, so I stopped watching it. Well, she kept it on probably another 6 months or a year than it would have otherwise, because she saved, I don't know, $1 million or something. I don't know quite how much she saved. But by doing it that way, she saved money, and that was very important to keep the show on the air, and she was hoping she could do it. She
right.
really tried to do it. I mean, I have to hand it to her.
Yeah. Yeah, and y'all, like I said before, y'all had a lot of people that came on and went on to other things. Kevin Bacon that's been on there. Mulaney, who was Elaney, and Hayden. We talked earlier about Nia Long. I didn't even know she was on Guy in Light. So like later.
Oh, she was wonderful.
Wow.
She was a friend of mine. I loved her. She
yeah.
would come over and visit, and my son was a big basketball fan, and she knew tons of basketball players.
Right.
So she'd get them to autograph shirts for them and get them tickets. I mean, she was just terrific. I loved her.
Yeah, I loved her too. And they've had her with David Grant and
right.
I liked her father, Vince Williams, who was Hampton Speaks.
Yes, that's
yeah.
right. Oh, and he died really young, didn't he?
Yeah, 97.
I mean, he was terrific. He was just such a lovely person. I never knew how he died. Do you know?
It was from pancreatic cancer. Yeah,
Wow.
because he had been off. He was recurrent toward the end, and then he went and did a stunt on Another World, and then he passed away in '97. What I loved about him was he played the saxophone a lot and had the ponytail. You know, that was really cool.
Oh, I loved him.
Yeah.
He was really cool. He was terrific. And Nia was just, I don't know why we became friends, because I don't think we ever worked together. But she was great friends of. Did O.J. Simpson have a daughter?
Not sure. I know him, but I'm not too on him.
I think he did. And who was a friend of Nia's, because she came on during the trial. She came with me to the studio one day, and it was during the trial. And I remember thinking, we got to turn this TV off right now. Because I didn't want her to, watch that. I thought it would be pretty. I'm pretty sure I'm right about that. I can't remember her name, but she was just a great friend of Nia's.
Right. You send a character to prison, there might be more to the story. So in order to really end them, you got to kill them off. And I'm not a huge fan of soaps when they bring a character back who died years ago. I feel like that ruined the plot line.
Like Roger, 9 times.
Yeah, it's like if they're dead, keep them off and bring on somebody else at this point. Do something different. But
I agree with you. That's the willing suspension of disbelief goes away if you bring Roger Thorpe back the 27th time. But you love him. You love to hate him so much that you're glad he's back to hate. There's nothing more fun than making these people do what you want them to do. And sometimes they take off and do what you don't want them to do. Right?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
I always am so stunned when one of my characters goes berserk and does something. I go, wait a minute, what are you doing that for? You know, I mean, I'm talking about when I'm writing it.
Right.
They take their own head and they take you somewhere and you go, but no, that wasn't my plan, and they don't care.
Yeah, and it's like when you're writing these stories, and the idea can hit you out of nowhere. I mean, not that I'm trying to go left field with this, but there's been times where if I'm changing clothes or if I'm in the shower, I can get an idea and I'd be like, I need to write this down because I'm going to forget. Because that has happened to me where I had an idea. If I didn't write it down, I'd be like, oh, I forgot.
Yeah, you've got to write it down right away.
Yeah.
Absolutely right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Tina, I had a blast talking with you again.
Well, Matt, mostly I hope you do beautifully with this show of yours.
Yeah.
All My Life. All My Life, is that what you're calling it?
Yes, ma'am.
That's good.
That's All My Life, and another one I got written, it's a half-hour kind of writing, it's called West End, and it's like a ER nurses show. It's similar to a soap that was on ABC called Port Charles. It's a ER nurses kind of show, and it's 7 interns and all that. And I wrote myself in there as a detective after Malice on Satin Light. My character
I love
is
Malice. He was
John
one of my
Malice.
favorite people.
Yeah. I recently reached out to
Fabulous
him,
man.
Mark Durham.
Where is he? Do you know?
I don't know what Mark Dorn is doing much. I mean, I know he was acting and he stopped. I did reach out to him to interview him. I told him a bit about my work, and I'm waiting for a response on Instagram. And not sure what Rob Bogue is doing much either, who was the second Mallet. I know he Marina.
Yeah, he did Mikey O'Leary did a play that Grant directed. Mikey wrote it. I was in it. Beth was in it. Robert Bogue was in it. Different people have played the part that Grant played. Grant was directing it, and Robert Bogue was in it. So I've seen him in the last year or two, and he came up and did the play and did a fabulous job. But I don't know what he's doing, the two of them are doing. They must be making money somehow, so they must be acting somewhere.
Yeah, that's I remember telling you about this the first time we talked. That's one of the things that I think sucks about all these shows off the air. It's like, when they're off, unless people are doing another soap, you don't know what everybody's doing. It's like, well, whatever happened to him, whatever happened to her. I love talking with you. I'm having a blast talking with all you guys. And we'll be back in just a minute, folks, after this commercial break.
Joanna.
Charles.
Theirs was a love affair, a love of butter stopped short by cholesterol.
I've dreamt of giving you this
I can't believe it's not butter.
I can't believe it's not butter is still the only spread flavored with real sweet cream buttermilk for a fresh butter taste, but without the cholesterol to spoil the romance.
I never thought I'd be swept off my feet again.
I can't believe it's not butter, now also in sweet unsalted sticks.
Well, YouTubers, it's been a lot of fun. Thank you for tuning in this week for P.E. Slick Podcast. I'm your host, Ranger Matt, signing off. Until next time, you have a good night now. See ya.